The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast without the breaks and commercials. Now, here's host Dom Geneva.
Well, welcome to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. We're here today with Veronica Dasher, Regional Manager, Government and Community Relations, NYSEG, RG&E, and we have a lot of things to talk to you about today about electricity, power, and what's going on. So, Veronica, you were just saying to me how to remember your name. So, why don't we tell our listeners how do we remember your name?
So you remember my name by saying Dasher, just like the reindeer. And usually people have it right away. They don't even need me to spell it.
Yeah. Me being Italian and having the last name of Geneva, I can't actually do that. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Are you a Rochester person? You're not a Rochester person. Where were you born? And my normal question is, when you were 10 years old, what did you want to do?
Ooh, that's a great one. So yes, I am a native Rochesterian, born and raised. I grew up in the city on the west side, and I've lived in Brighton for the past 17 years. When I was 10 years old, I wanted to be an attorney, and not just any attorney. I wanted to be an attorney that rode motorcycles.
There's the Lincoln lawyer, so you would be like the Harley Davidson lawyer. Would that be it? Yeah.
The Harley attorney.
Now what would you be? I mean, like what? You're making house calls, or I mean, how would I don't quite get how the two of those to get together. What made you think of that?
I was 10.
Okay. I can get that. So, tell me about your path in life. Where'd you go to school after your grammar school, whatever?
Sure. So after grammar school, I went to Nazareth Academy for high school. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I went to Monroe Community College, which is an excellent school.
Oh, absolutely.
And I obtained my bachelor's degree from Roberts Wesleyan College in organizational management. I'm currently pursuing a dual MBA.
Wow. So tell me about your job, about RG&E and NYSEG. I think a lot of people are kind of unaware of what these letters mean and what they are. So, NYSEG is New York State Electric and Gas, right?
Yes. NYSEG is New York State Electric and Gas. RG&E is Rochester Gas and Electric. The two are sister companies. So they're subsidiaries of a larger company, Avangrid, which owns 8 utilities in the Northeast. But more importantly, they have renewable energy assets in 24 states across the U.S. So our parent company is actually the third largest onshore renewable energy provider in the U.S.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here with, there are changes that are anticipated. There's things that probably aren't anticipated. One of the things, let's get rid of the elephant in the room right now, okay? Because the question everybody has when you talk about RG&E is, have you corrected your billing thing yet?
Yeah, so actually taking a step back into the career part of it, my card says that I'm the Regional Manager of Government and Community Relations. And that is still my title technically. But for about the past 8 to 9 months, I've actually been working on a special project as the project lead called Reinvigorating Rochester. And what we are doing with that program is enhanced community outreach and engagement. And it started from us seeing what the challenges were with our billing and going out and doing stakeholder outreach and understanding from various aspects of our community, from our business leaders to our nonprofit leaders to our customers and our government officials, talk to us. Where are we doing well? Where are we missing the mark? And we brought them in one by one with our new company president, who's been in office for a little over a year, Patricia Nilsson, and we had some very candid discussions. And based on that stakeholder feedback, and by the way, we're at over 100 people from the Rochester area now, we decided to develop and launch a program that would help with some of the challenges that we were seeing. COVID was a challenging time for us all, and it was the perfect storm because for us, we weren't able to go inside of people's homes in order to read their meters. People were home more, But we made the choice with the backing of our regulator, the Department of Public Service, not to enter homes for safety reasons. At the same time, we had the Great Resignation, where people were reevaluating and reassessing their lives and started to leave the workforce. So when we started reading meters again, we were getting accurate usage while people were at home more, and we hadn't read their meters for about 2 years. We also had an a labor shortage, which is something that happened nationally. And so when people were getting large bills, when there were errors on the bill, they were having trouble reaching people. We've since corrected that, though. We've made some changes in customer service. We've hired over 100 customer service and billing representatives to support our customers. We've also made some shifts in our staffing to better accommodate our customers' changing needs and demands. We are accelerating our deployment of smart meters. We refer to it as AMI, or advanced metering infrastructure. And what smart meters do is they automatically register usage, and they send it through our proprietary network. And we're consistently getting updates every 15 minutes once the meters are activated and installed.
So what percent of the population have these? Now these are the meters, and you're saying they respond directly to you somehow. So you don't have to go to somebody's home to read the meter, right? Is that what that is?
Correct.
Okay. So how do they do that? Is it Wi-Fi or is it wire? I mean, what is the physical way that gets done? And then tell me what percent of your customers have these things?
So we just installed about 75,000 in the Rochester area, and we have prioritized Rochester and changed our schedule, understanding the need that we have here for smart meter deployment. The usage is transmitted through a mesh network, and it's radio frequency technology. Every 15 minutes, we receive information from various customer sectors about usage for each household.
Okay. Are these things listening in on you?
They are not, and I'm glad that you asked that question.
So you like stupid questions then?
Not at all. You know, there are people out there who believe that the devices can listen in on them, or that we'll be able to shut their services off. And that's not how it works at all. The devices cannot listen in on you. They do not have any control over the house, and we will not shut services off just erroneously for anyone.
Well, it seems like that going to everybody's house to read a meter has got to be labor intensive. I mean, you're right. You know, some of the meters are outside the house. Some of the meters are inside the house, right?
Correct. And about 40% of the meters in Rochester are indoors.
Okay. And I guess one of the things that I wasn't aware of is you're absolutely right. I mean, their usage of electricity is higher because they're quarantined in their house, and they have all these electronic things going on or whatever. So their bills are not very accurate, and it seems like it's sorting itself out. So with that, we're heading to our first news break. Not news break. We're heading into our first commercial break, and we'll be right back. Well, after the commercial break. Well, welcome back. You're listening to No Nonsense Roundtable. We're here with Veronica Dasher, who is a regional manager for NYSEG RG&E. And so another elephant in the room question is, if we want to wave a magic wand, especially the government, they want to wave a magic wand, and all of a sudden, boop, everything's electric. Your lawnmower's electric, your car's electric. Then you can't have a gas stove anymore because gas, it's that's got to be electric and whatever. I think the question that a lot of people have is that for all these things, where's the electricity coming from? How much of our electricity comes from, let's say, coal-powered plants to begin with?
Well, in upstate New York, we are pretty lucky. About 91% of the energy in Western New York comes from renewable resources. We have Niagara Falls.
Yeah, okay.
And we also have Ginna Nuclear Power Plant, and nuclear energy is zero carbon emitting.
Well, I get that, but that's hardly renewable, right? I mean, it's got whatever radioactive stuff that they use in it. I mean,
so I should be a little bit clearer with my with my claim there. Yeah. Clean energy, zero
yes. Okay.
carbon emitting energy in upstate New York. With that said, there are other areas in the state that don't necessarily have those natural assets. So how we're supporting the state's clean energy goal is we're taking a hard look at our system. We have various teams on hand, such as our Smart Grids Innovation team that handles our EV programming, and we're figuring out how can we best support the energy transition, because as natural gas is phased out, that means that electricity usage will increase, and we want to make sure that our infrastructure is capable of handling that increase in electric usage.
Well, that compels the question, though, is that we as a country don't want to build any more nuclear plants, okay? And there are only so many waterfalls. So the rest of the plants are coal, right? I mean, we're not talking about New York State now. We're not talking about upstate New York. We're talking about across the rest of the country. I mean, and there's no way of making coal like clean coal. I mean, well, tell me about that, because they say, there's clean coal. Is there really clean coal?
I don't have an answer to that question.
Okay.
I know that we are looking at we as a country are looking at several different technologies that can replace coal and other fuel sources, such as hydrogen, for example. Mm-hmm. We're doing more with wind onshore and offshore. We are also exploring battery storage. So I think that right now is a time where people are exploring not only how we can generate renewable energy, but also how it can be transported to different areas, because there's a lot of wind in the Midwest. Mm. There's not necessarily a way to transport that wind. So I think we're at a time of exploring how we can best reduce our carbon emissions in this country.
Well, one of the challenges you have, if I'm not mistaken, is the distance that you can transmit electricity, right? I mean, you can't take electricity here and send it to California or Arizona or something like that, right? I mean, the lines, it's incapable of doing that, right?
Oh, it would be very difficult to do, for sure. Yes.
No, but I think it only goes a certain number of miles. You can't take a transmission line and make it more than a certain number of miles. A couple hundred miles or something like that. I think it's sort of like like a restriction on what the equipment can do. Is that true?
Well, while I'm not necessarily familiar with the exact footage, there are transmission lines that go interstate, mm-hmm. But I don't know what the regulatory factor would be in terms of how far it can go.
So in the transition from gas-powered automobiles to electric-powered automobiles, I think there's some people's misconception, and some people's have a fear of range. Okay, the cars will only go a couple of hundred miles. But to me, and I'm a car guy. I look at this like, well, you're filling up your car every night, though. I mean, when you bring your car into your garage and you plug it in, it gets a full charge. So how many times do you really need to go, 300 miles? Normally speaking, in a day, you go, 25, 50 miles or something like that. So you have plenty of juice in the car to do that. And so I think that people's fear of that is probably a little irrational. I think if you have an electric car right now, you probably have a second car, because if you want to drive from here to Orlando, you got to do something. One of the things that seems to be getting better and better is the charge time. Is that true?
Yes. The electric vehicles are starting to utilize different technologies, different battery technologies, and the drive time on them, the mileage that they can go, is increasing.
Well, and the infrastructure, I mean, you guys have to be doing something with the infrastructure for charging cars, right?
Well, we are looking at our infrastructure currently and seeing where we need to fortify it. Something that a lot of people don't know is that they can actually charge their vehicles at their homes. Right. So New York has over 10,000 charging stations throughout the state, and our customers can charge the vehicles at their residence, mm-hmm. Which helps with ensuring that they have the appropriate fuel that they need.
For people that are unfamiliar, so you go out and you buy a Tesla, or when it says electric vehicles, you have to buy the equipment to charge that separately, or is that part of the deal, or what? Do you know?
Well, with Tesla, I believe it's different than it is for other vehicles. I believe you need a special charger for Teslas. And people can have chargers installed in their homes. They can also use their standard outlets in order to charge the vehicle as well.
So the thing with the electric cars is that, of course, it takes the infrastructure, but you don't need the infrastructure. You can do in your home, you can do in your driveway, whatever. The interesting thing, though, is I was at a dealer meeting once in New York City. And I was talking to a dealer in Brooklyn, and he says, we don't have driveways. So, I mean, there's the challenge. My daughter lives in Brooklyn. She has to drive, maybe, sometimes 15 minutes to find a parking spot. And once you find a parking spot, well, what are you going to plug it into? We don't have that problem here because most people have driveways. But that's part of the problem in having an electric car right now.
Right. And again, I think that this is a new frontier for us as a country and a state overall. And you'd have that challenge in any big city, right? We use Brooklyn as an example. As there is more adoption in the industry, more chargers will come online to support the cars, the vehicles.
Now, we're subsidizing this quite a bit, though. I mean, the government gives you rebates and whatever that are rather enormous when you're buying an electric car, right?
Correct. I believe the federal government is up to $7,500, and New York State offers incentives as well. Well,
it's certainly a trend it's going that way. Everybody thinks that they're cool, if nothing else. You see a Tesla come down the road, and you know it's something completely different. And I mean, even the Mustang right now, there's a 4-door Mustang, that's an electric car. And with that, we are going into a news break, and we'll hear you. You'll hear us. Yeah, I always say you'll see us. No, it's a radio. Nobody sees anybody. You will hear us on the other side. Well, welcome back. You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. We're talking to Veronica Dasher, who is a regional manager for NYSEG and RG&E. And I think my mom said at one time, you don't have to need to know everything, but you should be able to look it up. So a couple of things back when, before the break, that we were a little bit unsure of, and we did some research during the break, and we're going to take my mom's advice and say, hey, this is what we learned. So what did we learn?
We learned that New York State has a little under 170,000 electric vehicles on the road. We also learned that transmission lines have about a maximum span of 300 miles to transmit before they terminate.
Yeah, that's why you need power plants. You can't just have one large power plant in the middle of the country that supplies everybody. It's got to be regionally done. And then I'm sure you get this thing of like how do you fuel it and whatever. I mean, the world would be great if we just had nuclear plants all over the place, but people are more afraid of that than anything else. I mean, my personal opinion is that nuclear power plants are sort of like hydrogen. You don't want when you think of hydrogen, you think of the Hindenburg. Okay, although it could be a very, very good fuel for cars, but you are afraid of hydrogen. I think that happens with nuclear power plants. People are afraid of nuclear power plants, but except for very few cases, they've been very reliable.
Correct. I think people think about incidents like Chernobyl, and immediately that sours their perception of nuclear, but it is a powerful generator for us here in the upstate New York region.
Yeah, as far as your companies go, we were talking before the show that this is you were calling it a franchise. How would you explain the difference? Because there's RG&E and there's NYSEG and there's National Grid, and you'll each have your own systems. Is there an integrated system for outages, repairs, and stuff like that, or does each entity have their own?
So each entity has their own, we're companies, right? So we have our own infrastructure, we have our own systems, back-end systems. However, if there's a storm and we need large-scale response, we do engage in what we call mutual aid, and other utilities will help each other on their own systems. But they are the technologies that we use, aside from the commodities themselves, right? Our billing systems, our even some of the technology we use on our electric lines and on our systems are different from one another, but the basic concept is the same, which is how we're able to help each other.
Well, the technology, I mean, out here, so I can't talk about your company's hotel, but National Grid, I love the fact that now when there's an outage, they'll tell you there's an outage. When it's restored, they'll tell you it's restored. And as opposed to 15,000 people calling in and saying they don't have power, they know already, and they're telling you that. So it makes your life a heck of a lot easier.
It does. And we have a similar outage management system that notifies customers. And then that's actually a perfect example of what I was referencing, in that National Grid system may differ from the system that we use, but we offer the same service.
Yeah, it's so much. The technology is so much better than it was years ago. Yeah, I mean, you were just kept in the dark. Now, let's touch on something that's maybe not all that serious, but I can understand people getting upset. So these companies are coming and clearing the lines, the trees that get in the way of the lines. I mean, some people are awfully upset about that, but I can see the need for that.
Absolutely. The highest cause of outages are trees, falling limbs. And so we have, it's necessary for us to do tree trimming, what we call vegetation management, in order to reduce the amount of outages that customers experience. So while people are upset about that, and if a customer asks us not to do it, we don't. Usually we have people who are asking us to come out and look at it, even if it's customer-owned equipment. But it's necessary for us to maintain safety and reliability on our system.
Well, I see some people get awfully upset with that. And they take this big, beautiful tree, it's around some lines, but it's a round line. You need to do something about that. But some people get awfully upset with that. I know. They call you up and Now, tell me about how many people are working for the companies. How many people are involved in this? And you said you had a problem with COVID and people. Obviously, you can't do a lot of stuff at home. But how many people do you have now?
We have over 800 employees that live and work in the greater Rochester area.
And what is the greatest challenge that you have? Getting employees? Is that it?
In general, companies are reporting having labor shortages since COVID, and we are not exempt from those challenges. However, we've found that there seems to be an uptick. We, as part of our community engagement efforts, our human resource teams are going out to more employment fairs in order to source good talent. We're partnering with universities. Recently, we actually traveled around the country in order to go to different college fairs and work to recruit.
So there are
the company.
There are a number of different. Let's do a little retail here. There's a number of different things, rebates and whatever that people can apply for with your company to save money on their electric bill. I mean, let's go through some of those things that might be available to people.
When you say rebates on electric bills, are you?
Well, I'm saying, generally speaking, there are things that I think people are not aware of that your company provides. And what would they be?
Well, we have several energy efficiency programs.
Let's talk about that.
Sure. RG&E offers discounted rates on things like LED bulbs, Nest thermostats, and other tools that people can use to monitor to help reduce their energy usage.
So how do you go about taking advantage of that? I mean, I like that. Everybody loves the Nest. Okay, everybody likes the Nest thermostat and whatever. You're saying there's some way that you can acquire that and get some type of break by contacting you? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if they go to RGESmartSolutions.com, we actually have a marketplace online where customers can purchase devices from our marketplace. And with the LED bulbs, for example, those on several occasions have been marked down. And we've had some partnerships with big box retailers where we have partnered with like Lowe's and Home Depot and offered reduced rates for various energy saving appliances.
Well, that's pretty interesting. I mean, what was that site again?
RGESmartSolutions.com.
Right. I think most people have, I haven't heard of that. I mean, so, and you go, let's, I tell you during the break again, during the break, we'll go take a look at that and kind of explore it a little bit. But there's some type of deal where if you have like solar power, solar panels, or you have something that's producing electricity, you'll buy the electricity back or something. How does that work?
Yes. So with solar panels help to generate electricity. And if, like, let's say you were to install solar panels on your home, right? If you consumed less than what your solar panels produce, there is a mechanism for you to put that electricity back into the grid. And at that point, it would be purchased and you would receive a credit on your bill.
I've heard, I mean, I don't know if it's urban legend or not, but I've heard some people have absolutely no electric bill because they have these panels. They have so many panels around their house. Is that actually possible, or is that like urban legend?
Oh, no, that's true. In fact, I am enrolled personally, Veronica the person, I'm enrolled in what's called a community solar program where where people can enroll or subscribe with a community distributed generator or a community solar provider for a subscription fee each month, and they guarantee some level of savings on the energy bill itself. It's separate from RG&E, and I actually received 2 separate bills for this service, but they have the community solar that some developer generated a community solar farm, and by buying into that, I'm able to receive some of those credits onto my bill.
Well, that's kind of cool. And we are heading into another break, and we're going to talk more about, let's talk about this solar thing when we get back.
Okay.
Well, welcome back. We're talking to Veronica Dasher, who's a regional manager for NYSEG RG&E. And we're talking about solar, and there's basically 2 different ways of getting solar. One is for your house, just a regular unit. One is a solar farm, and you were talking about like a shared. There might be a third thing, like a shared thing in a community where you share solar with your neighbors or something.
That's actually the community solar program.
Yeah.
So.
So where would these units be? On everybody's house and you share it, or is it like in somebody's lot? I mean, how does that work?
So it's similar to actually what you were just saying about the solar farm. But what happens is the company then usually offers subscriptions for people to buy into that solar farm, similar to a co-op.
Okay.
And then you receive credit for the energy that is sold from that solar farm.
But what are the physical panels? I mean, you have somebody's lot. I mean, it's all in George's lot, and Sue's and Mary. They kind of get the electricity from that. I mean, how does that work?
So the solar farm itself, it could be where solar farms usually are, a large field.
Okay.
And so just like we receive power into our homes now that's generated from, Gannett Power Plant, Niagara Falls, those generating sources are not in our backyards. So it's similar to that in that the solar farms are maybe in a rural area or in a field, but we're simply buying into the concept of that energy being sold onto the wholesale market.
Well, it's a complicated business. So, you are private companies, and then you have public companies. Like Con Ed is a public company, right?
Con Ed is a private company.
No kidding. I did not know that. But you do have companies that are publicly owned, right?
There are municipal utilities,
right.
And so usually municipal utilities they were founded that way. The electricity is still pretty new when you think about it, and the more you see it a lot in rural areas. The state of Nebraska is the only statewide public run utility that there is. But for public utilities, they were usually founded that way, which is why they are the way that they are. But most power is provided by private companies because we're able to offer different services that those public utilities cannot offer.
Well, and your electricity is amazingly reliable, except for the one time it came to a head a while back was this thing in Texas. Could you explain what happened in Texas? Because they have some really strange thing where they have a power system that is tied to the government that doesn't go across state lines or something. Explain what happened back when they get a cold snap and all of a sudden they have no electricity.
Yeah, so the Texas energy system is interesting. They are the only state that does not have interconnection between other states. And what that means is that they don't have transmission lines from any neighboring states coming into Texas, and they don't provide it out to to other areas. And so that means that they are not regulated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And from what I have researched, they like it that way. There is a wholesale market in Texas called ERCOT. Ours is the New York Independent System Operator. And when the cold snap happened a couple of years ago, I believe it was 2021, their infrastructure was not fortified to withstand the conditions. And so they ended up in a nasty loop because natural gas is a common generation source and their gas was frozen. So the natural gas wasn't able to generate electricity, which means they didn't have the electricity to help with the natural gas. In addition to that, customers didn't have natural gas going to their homes, and solar panels were frozen as well. There were a lot of stories saying that the renewable energy in Texas failed them, but in all actuality, our wind energy was accessible if providers were able to de-ice them. And it ended up helping at the end of it all because we were able to get wind units working before they could get some of the other generation sources up and running. What also happened is you have the laws of supply and demand. So because we didn't have Texas didn't have as much supply, the demand went up and prices spiked on the wholesale market, and there wasn't a governor to really control that. So people ended up with high energy bills.
And reliability is, I'm sitting here laughing because I was thinking about reliability, and I've been through two blackouts. One of them was in the 60s and one of them was in the 70s. In the 60s, I was a young boy. And I forgot what year it was, 65 or whatever it was. And I'm playing with my little slot cars up in my room, and all the lights went out, on the entire East Coast. And my mom, I'll never forget, she calls me, "Tommy, did you do something?" like my slot cars took down the entire grid from Niagara Falls down to New Jersey, whatever the heck it was. But one of the things we were talking about before too was that there's this program where you can say there is electric providers and electric billers or whatever, and I thought that was just for municipalities or it was for businesses, but you can get a provider, and that's not the person who bills you. How does that thing work? I mean, I've never been really familiar with how that works.
Sure. So I believe what you're referring to is energy supply. And supply has to do with the commodity of electricity and natural gas itself. RG&E, the utilities in New York, we're delivery companies. And through deregulation, the Department of Public Service basically said you cannot generate and sell a supply and own the infrastructure at the same time. So companies had to sell off their generation assets. Gunay Nuclear Power Plant is a perfect example of that. RG&E once owned that power plant, but several years ago, we sold it. So that opened up a wholesale market for companies to buy from the New York Independent System Operator and sell directly to customers. And those companies are called energy supply companies, or ESCOs for short. So any residential customer can choose to go with an energy supply company or an ESCO, and businesses also do it. Now, you may have the conception that it's only available to business because they really take advantage of it. And that's because we offer electricity supply at variable rates. At whatever the market rate is, we're not allowed to fix those prices, but energy supply companies can. So for businesses, particularly large scale ones who want to have peace of mind when they're making their budgeting and projections, they like to have a fixed price per kilowatt hour so that they have a good idea of what they'll be spending versus I wouldn't say taking a chance, but versus going with a market rate where there could be some price volatility.
So how do people find these companies that do the billing and whatever? So I mean, when I had my dealerships, I'd be knocking on my door like every week. But now that I'm a private citizen or whatever, I don't get solicited by these companies anymore.
Yep. So you can actually find a list of suppliers on RG&E's website. We don't compete with them, and we provide that information. If you go to rg.com, type in supplier services, you should be able to click a link that will take you to a list of energy supply companies that customers can receive power from.
And this is exactly the reason why we have people like you on the show. The things that people don't know about, they should know about. There's ways of saving money. There's ways of planning your life. And I appreciate you coming on the show. We'll have to have you on again, and hope there's no more ice storms to challenge us in the future. And, thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Next week, 10 a.m. on Saturdays, right here as the No Nonsense Roundtable.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every weekend from 10 to 11 on News Radio Wham 1180. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.